All right, hello class. If you may not know, I am traveling this week, so we will not be able to meet face to face. But I have recorded this video to make up for our face to face time, especially the content that we were going to cover this week. So make sure that you go over all the content that I have uploaded for Module 7. It includes this video, 3 other videos that we would have seen in class if we had met. 2 of those videos are just short 1-minute examples of what observational learning looks like, and one video is actually an overview of Bandura's work that we are going to talk about today as well. In addition to the videos, there's also a quiz that you need to do. And finally, to make up for our face-to-face discussion time, I have added a prompt. Make sure that you finish that by next week. All right. That shouldn't take too much of your time. Just find the usual, perhaps work during the usual class time to go over the content. All right. So let's move on and talk about the things we have to cover today. Starting with social cognitive view of learning, which is based on Albert Bandura's theories of observational learning. We need to look at the role of others in teaching us, voluntarily or involuntarily, and what that means for how we think of ourselves, and its implications for education. So, like I said, social cognitive view is based on Albert Bandura's theories of learning and motivation. To give you a brief background, was born in 1925. He was one of the key figures who made the argument to move beyond behaviorism, because it did not address behaviorist theory did not address the role of social interaction and our obvious social reality that we create, and how behaviorism did not cover what modeling looks like, how we learn by just observing other people. All right, so in observational learning, if we look at this picture, what do we see? We see a boy walking like adults in front of him. There are, of course, examples that we see all over. Looking at kids dancing at music videos, looking at animals trying to mimic other animals' behaviors or like the elder animals' behaviors. Observational learning is all around us. We go through it ourselves. So what's interesting here is to discuss or to think through the motivation for doing something, right? What makes someone want to imitate someone else? What might motivate someone to continue the new behavior? For instance, if we look at this picture, why is the boy choosing to walk like the adults in front of him, right? And would he continue to do this behavior? What would make him continue to do this behavior? Next, we need to think about the process of observational learning. How does someone learn something new from observing someone else, right? Can we identify some steps? And is observational learning a voluntary or involuntary process? Are we doing this on purpose, or are we, is this a part of our subconscious thinking, or just instinctively who we are? So Albert Bandura suggested that learning would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform them of what to do. This can be seen as kind of a critique of the behaviorist theory that we learn by responding to stimuli presented to us. So all the learning has to be individual directed learning. But what Bandura is saying that if that were the case, then we would need to actually jump off a cliff to know that it is dangerous. So Bandura claims that we don't need to do that. We don't need to jump off a cliff to understand. We can learn by looking at other people and what repercussions they face based on their actions. So it's kind of like saying that other people experiencing behaviors learning can teach us about respond to stimuli. So it's kind of an extension or going beyond behaviorist ideas. Fortunately, most human behavior is learned observationally, Bandura claimed. From observing others, he says that one forms an idea of how new behaviors are performed. And on later occasions, you can code this information and it serves as a guide for action. You see someone else performing a certain way in a social setting, and you make a note of that that is how one can behave. It becomes kind of a model for you to behave in that context, given if you haven't seen such behavior before. Because people can learn from example what to do, at least in approximate form, before performing any other behavior, they are spared of needless trial and error, right? So try and think of all different examples or things that you know because you have seen other people go through it. If you see someone else touch an object and it turns out to be hot and it burns their hand, you don't need to touch it yourself to know that it is hot. You know it by observing other people. So in this theory, Bandura says that there are three key influences that play a role in our observational learning. First is the social influence, or factors that come into play environmentally. For example, other people that can act as models, instruction from other people, feedback, any external contingencies that are presented socially are part of this influence. Next are the behaviors, the things that we do, our progress towards a goal, our motivation to do things, our motivation to learn, our actions done in response to something, our behavior elements. Third are the personal elements that are driving us internally, our attributions of ourselves, our self-efficacy, our evaluation of who we are, our regulation of our progress. These are all internal influences, personal influences, as separated from behaviorist or social influences. All three of these, personal, social, and behavioral, are in constant interaction. They influence and are influenced by each other. Let's look at behavioral and social factors first. Starting with observation. What is the process of observational learning? We can say that the first step is to obviously observe someone. Observational learning requires your senses and your brain to pay attention to something, right? Look at the example of the puppy video that I posted on Canvas. Observation is the first step for observational learning. Next step is internalizing, meaning that once you pay attention to the behaviors and actions of others, you want to retain this observation, make sense of it for yourself. What would this mean for you personally? Step 3 is then to produce that behavior elsewhere, right? You have observed somebody participate in a behavior, in an act. You internalize that, and now you want to produce it. You see violence on TV, you might want to perform that violence to somebody else. Next step, or next process, is modeling. What characteristics do you think make for a more powerful model? Look at this ad from the 1940s, late 1940s, I think, of Camel cigarettes. It says clearly, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. What is happening here? The advertisement is appealing to audiences or to consumers to make a claim that doctors, that is, health professionals, recommend this product because they consume it themselves. By making this claim, they're presenting doctors as models for appropriate behavior when it comes to cigarettes. If a doctor smokes a cigarette, then why can't I? So we can say that for someone to be considered as a model, you must have some form of respect or admiration for them. You must appeal to their authority. Next, the model must be proficient at the behavior. It cannot be anybody trying to attempt at the behavior. It must be a representation of their mastery in the behavior. For example, when it comes to health, you want to look up to a doctor versus an engineer. Age or gender also play a role in how or who we consider as a model. It, of course, depends on the task, though. For instance, we might look up to people based on their gender roles in society for guidance on a particular behavior. Children are motivated to imitate the actions of others who seem competent, powerful, prestigious, or enthusiastic. Any of these positive, authoritative qualities can be seen as a representation of a good model. Parents, teachers, other siblings, older siblings, athletes, action heroes, rock stars, film personalities, any of these may serve as models, which is why representation of models in media and pop culture is crucial. It also depends on the age and interests of the child. Younger kids are more susceptible to look up to models in society than older children. Using observational learning, the question arises, how can we explain the importance of role models and mentors, both negative and positive? A model doesn't necessarily have to be someone who displays a positive behavior. You could learn negative behavior from models as well. Did you personally ever have a role model or mentor who affected you personally in a powerful way? What kinds of role models and mentors are available to students in schools? What kinds of role models and mentors might we need more in schools? These are some questions for you to think about. Next part of this process is motivation. Motivation can be considered the will or desire or motive to act. What makes you move? What makes you make a choice whether to do something or not to do it? You have to believe you can do it. You have to care for it to do it. And you have to actually be able to do it. So it's your perception of whether you can or cannot. It's the value of the task itself. And it's the ability to be able to do the task. The model can make you want to imitate more. That could help with the motivation to perform a task. But why might that be? If you look at the videos that I shared of dog going downstairs, the little baby dancing, or examples of from personal experience of looking at kids on the playground punching each other, reinforcement and punishment play a crucial role in shaping these behaviors. For instance, this is a clip from one of the videos that I posted online. This was the Bobo doll experiment that Bandura conducted to see how kids react to models. You would see that personal beliefs and values play a role here, but it's also the kind of behavior that you see. For instance, in this video, you would see a model performing a violent act at a Bobo doll, which is immediately followed by kids behaving violently as well. Of course, observational learning plays a role in teaching content as well. I have posted this slide online. You can look at the videos here. For instance, this one is a video from Sesame Street where Mark Ruffalo is trying to teach empathy. There's another video here of Count Dracula teaching Cookie Monster how to count. Personal factors also play a role in observational learning. For instance, self-efficacy is a key factor in how we think about ourselves, whether we are capable of doing a task or not. Observers attend to models when they believe they are capable of learning or performing the model behavior. Observation of similar models affects our self-efficacy. If they can do it, I can too. Self-efficacy is somewhat different from self-concept though. Self-efficacy is more future-oriented. It's a content-specific assessment of competence to perform a specific task. However, self-concept is a more global construct that contains many perceptions about the self, including self-efficacy. For instance, self-concept is developed as a result of external and internal comparisons, using other people or other aspects of the self as frames of references. I have seen this other person behave a certain way. Can I do that or not? Am I better or worse? We make these constant comparisons to create a self-concept. But self-efficacy focuses on your ability to successfully accomplish a particular task with no need for comparisons. The question is whether you can do it or not. It doesn't matter whether others would be successful at it or not in relation to you. Also, self-efficacy beliefs are strong predictors of behavior, but self-concept has a weaker predictive power. What that means is our perception of our self-efficacy helps us determine whether we participate in a particular type of behavior in future or not, because self-efficacy is tied with particular tasks. Self-concept, being a general conception of yourself, is not a good predictor of whether you would do a certain behavior in future or not. Agency is another concept that is crucial here. Agency involves the ability to make intentional choices and plans, design appropriate courses of action, and then motivate and regulate the execution of these plans and actions. It is often tied with a feeling of freedom or independence to be able to do something. From a social cognitive view, we can change our environments, control our own behavior, support the actions of others, and take charge of ourselves if we have agency. As you can see, this is different from the behaviorist view that did not give a lot of agency to the learner. There are 4 sources of self-efficacy expectations that agency also helps us understand. These are mastery experiences, physiological and emotional arousal, vicarious experiences, and social persuasion. Let's go into each of these quickly. By mastery experiences, we mean direct experiences affect our self-efficacy. Success raises it, and failure decreases it. How we do at direct experiences constantly shapes our self-efficacy. But it also depends on how you interpret arousal. For instance, how we react physiologically and emotionally to our experiences can shape our self-efficacy as well. If you're anxious and worried, it reduces your self-efficacy. If you're excited or feeling more positive emotions or interpret more positive emotions, self-efficacy increases. Someone else may model a certain experience to you as well. You may identify with the model, and that can also affect your self-efficacy. Like I said, if this person can do it, so can I. Finally, social persuasion alone cannot create enduring increases in self-efficacy. But a persuasive boost in self-efficacy can lead to a student to make an effort or attempt new strategies, or perhaps just try hard enough to succeed. So persuasion, even though by itself may not be as strong a factor to affect self-efficacy, it can boost confidence to increase the likelihood of improving self-efficacy. What are some implications of what we have talked about today for teaching and learning? Right? We've learned that observational behavior can teach us new things without having to experience ourselves. We learn through observation. Motivation also plays a factor here, but it also affects how we think of ourselves, whether we have the capability, the ability, and the resources to be able to perform a task. Next week, for Lesson 8, there's 2 readings that you need to do. The Armrod article on Vygotsky and a short article on rethinking technology. For Lesson 7 and 8, Assignment 4 is due March 29th. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.